questions, questions orales. The honourable member for South Surrey White Rock.
This desperate Prime Minister announced a temporary pause on carbon tax on home heating for some Canadians in some regions, but only if you heat with oil. How is that fair? In Sudbury, temperatures dropped to -30 in the winter. Families are struggling to keep the heat on. Conservatives will take the carbon tax off of all home heating bills on all Canadians. On Monday, the Liberal MP from Sudbury has a choice. Vote for the Prime Minister's carbon tax or vote for our common sense Conservative plan to take the tax off and keep the heat on for everyone in Sudbury.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources.
Madam Speaker, when it comes to fighting climate change, all I ever hear from the Conservative Party is what they oppose. They oppose providing heat pumps to save on energy bills. They oppose price on pollution that will put more money in the pockets of Canadians. The heat pump program is a national program. They also oppose the offshore renewable energy projects. If the Conservative Party actually cares about Canadians, they would present policies that actually support and not just cut on government programs. Climate change is important. We're taking address to deal with this, and that's what we're going to be doing, Madam Speaker.
Honourable Member for South Surrey White Rock.
The Prime Minister is creating two classes of Canadians, those who pay the carbon tax and those who don't. The temporary pause on home heating is for some Canadians, but not for everyone in North Bay. The North Bay Food Bank reports they're running low on supplies. Winter is coming. After 8 years of this Prime Minister, people are forced to choose between heating and eating. He's not worth the cost. On Monday, the Liberal MP from North Bay has a choice. Vote for the Liberal carbon tax or vote with common sense Conservatives to take the tax off and keep the heat on for everyone in North Bay.
L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire.
Madam Speaker, we're helping Canadians all over the country to go away from expensive, polluting fuels as quickly as possible to fight climate change. This is why we're making it even cheaper and easier to install heat pumps. We're expanding the program to save $2,500 a year on home heating bills and put more money in people's pockets. This is particularly important for rural and remote communities. The Conservatives are doing all they can to end action on climate change, cut government programs, and block good jobs on renewable projects. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member South Surrey White Rock.
What happened to a Canadian is a Canadian is a Canadian. The Liberal member for Thunder Bay Superior North has been in cabinet for 8 years, yet energy prices have skyrocketed in her region. The Prime Minister's temporary pause on carbon tax applies to some Canadians in some regions, but not everyone in Thunder Bay. Not fair. Conservatives will take the carbon tax off all home heating bills for all Canadians. On Monday, the Liberal minister from Northern Ontario has a choice. Vote for the Liberal carbon tax or vote with common sense Conservatives to take the tax off and keep the heat on for everyone in Thunder Bay.
L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire.
Madam Speaker, every day Liberal MPs stand up against the Conservative Party who routinely vote against vital supports for affordability, housing, and health care. We have been there for Canadians across every region for the past 8 years. Meanwhile, the Conservative MPs are opposing every single measure we introduced to address affordability and climate change. This approach is reckless. Instead of their track record of divisive politics, they should be able to support good measures to help Canadians. This is a national program. Despite the misinformation from the Conservative Party, is reckless and unacceptable.
I want to remind members that they'll want to, I'm sure that whoever posed the question wants to hear it as opposed to hearing its members interrupt. L'honorable député de Louis.
The honourable member for Louis Saint Laurent. Madam Speaker, after 8 years of this Liberal government, this Prime Minister has found a new way to divide Canadians. Some Canadians will get the pause in the Liberal carbon tax, and then the 97% of other Canadians who won't get it. That shows very clearly that this tax is not worth it, just like the Prime Minister. And in fact, it just shows that the Liberal carbon tax is a tax measure, not an environmental one. When will the Prime Minister finally understand and let all Liberal members vote with common sense and scrap the Liberal carbon tax on residential heating? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources. Madam Speaker, there is no price on pollution in Quebec. At the federal level, when it comes to fighting climate change, all we hear from the Conservatives is that they are opposed to heat pumps for saving on energy bills. That's a national program. They oppose pricing pollution and giving money back to Canadians. They don't want any of that. If they really cared about Canadians, they would bring forward a plan and not only say what they want to scrap, they want to scrap programs and not support Canadians, and they also don't want to do anything about climate change. The Honourable Member, what we want to scrap, Madam Speaker, is the Liberal carbon tax. Here's something everyone agrees on. In Canada, winter is cold. You need to heat your home, and that's expensive. That's why we need home heating during the winter. Everyone agrees on that, and what we don't agree on is that some people seem to think it would be good to have a carbon tax on heating. We don't agree with that. On Monday, there will be a vote on this. And it even seems like the NDP will vote in favor of our motion. Now, while I respect the NDP, I'll believe it when I see it. Now, another thing, we don't know if the Bloc Québécois will vote with the Liberals or with common sense. When will we know if the Prime Minister is going to allow his members to vote for common sense? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Madam Speaker, every day, Liberal members oppose the Conservative Party, who are constantly standing against common sense measures on housing and health. Over the last 8 years, we have supported Canadians throughout the country, while Conservative members stand against all of the measures we have introduced to fight poverty and climate change. Their approach is irresponsible. Instead of continuing with their divisive policies, they should support good measures to support Canadians throughout the country.
South Shore, St. Margaret's.
Nova Scotia Liberal MPs got an earful this summer in how the carbon tax was making life more unaffordable and that they were having to choose between eating, heating, and housing. And last week, on the day of the massive rally for the leader of the Conservatives in Nova Scotia, the panicking Liberal Prime Minister, who is plummeting in the polls, made an emergency announcement. What was the big announcement? Was it to remove the cause of the problem of the cost of living crisis and axe the carbon tax? No. Was it to permanently take the carbon tax off home heating at least? No. It was to pause the tax on oil heating temporarily, but quadruple it after the next election. And the Liberal minister from Newfoundland said the pause only applies to places that vote Liberal. Atlantic Canadians want fairness, not divisive politics. I challenge Atlantic Liberals to vote for the Conservative motion to remove this Prime Minister's costly carbon tax from all forms of home heating so that Canadians can keep the heat on.